Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Shayantani Pal, Associate Professor, Department of Ancient Indian History and Culture, University of Calcutta. Today our subject is Indian culture, the paper is Indian epigraphy, and the subject we will discuss today is copperplate charters. Now copperplate charters are charters written on sheets of copper. We find a large number of copperplate charters throughout India, throughout actually the Indian subcontinent, including Southeast Asia from the period 600 CE to 1300 CE. So, in this topic we would like to discuss why the issuance of copperplate charters increased during this period and why we find the copperplate charters in earlier period. These are some topics which we will discuss today. Now, our learning objectives are the copperplate charters and their general features, the emergence of the copperplate charters, the textual background of the copperplate charters, the pattern of copperplate charters and the changes in the pattern of the copperplate charters, the study of different sections of the texts written on copperplate charters, the donors, the recipients, the tenure and the privileges of the land granted, the debates on the impact of land grants and different types of land grants. Now, the general features of the copperplate charters. Copperplate charters record religious land grants. Such land grants were normally tax free and permanent in nature. That is why they were written on permanent documents like sheets of copper. The practice of issuing copperplate charters began in the 4th century. In Sanskrit, the copper plates are known variously as Tamra Shasana, Tamra Patta and Tamra Pattika. Now, the emergence of the copperplate charters. Inscriptions of the Shatavahanas refer to some Pattikas. As we have already discussed, Pattika is the Sanskrit term for charter. In cave number 3 at Nasik, we have 3 inscriptions which has a similar format like the copperplate charters of a later period. These inscriptions might be copies of the actual Pattikas which we do not find. They were probably issued by the Satavahana kings and they were written by the recipients of the gifts on the cave walls to proclaim the donation of the rulers. So, as you can see, these writings were actually engraved by the recipients and not by the donors. The case is not the same in the copperplate charters. All the copperplate charters were written by the issuing authority. Now, the earliest land grants, the earliest series of land grants we find only in the 4th century in different parts of India. Here are some examples of the different copperplate charters which belong to the 4th century. One is the grant of Bhulunda. This Bhulunda is a king in the Bagh area in the western part of Madhya Pradesh. His copperplate charter is dated in the Gupta era 47 which comes to 367 CE. Then we have the one copperplate charter of a king called Ishvara Rata from Kalachala which is in Kathiawar, that is also dated in Gupta era in 47 CE, 47 Gupta era, that comes to 367 CE. Then we have 2 copperplate charters from Eastern Deccan in Moidavolu which is a village in Andhra Pradesh. Moidavolu plates of Pallava Shiva Skanda Barman, and then we have another copperplate charter of the Vakataka king Vindhya Shakti I from Western Deccan from a village called Basim. Now, you can see there are some phrases which are almost similar. Look into the left side of the column. There are some expressions used in the Basim plate of Vakataka Vindhya Shakti which is from Western Deccan, and to the right side there are some expressions used in the Hiraharagalli copper plate and also the Maidavolu copper plate from Eastern Deccan. So, in these 2 columns we have one charter from Western Deccan and we have one charter from Eastern Deccan. Please note that some of the expressions are similar. As for example, look into number 7, Abhara Pappesa and Avhara Pappesang. So, this means that the Bharas, that is the Bhattas, the Bhattas are the soldiers, they should not pravesha, they should not enter the gifted land. So, this expression is similar in both the copper plates. Then look at number 2, Arattha Sang Vinayika and Arattha Sang Vinayikam. The both are the same type of expression. By this the gifted land was made free from the administrative control of the state. So, why there are similarity between two copper plate charters issued in two areas, Eastern Deccan and Western Deccan? These are some facts which we would discuss in this lecture. Now, the textual background of copper plate charters. The textual background or how a copper plate charter should be written has been discussed by different authorities, different Dharmashastra writers like Yagyavalkya, Narada, Brihaspati. Here we have a quotation from Yagyavalkya, who has been assigned to first to the 3rd century CE. He says, when I quote, when a king makes a gift of land or bestows a nibandha, he should execute a writing about the gift for the information of future good kings. He, that is the king, should issue a permanent edict bearing his signature and the date on a piece of cloth or on a copper plate marked at the top with his seal, and write down thereon the names of his ancestors and of himself, the extent or measurement of what is gifted, and set out the passages from the Smritis that condemn the resumption of the gifts. So, here Yagyavalkya gives a detail how a copper plate charter should be drafted. Here we have an example of an early copper plate charter, as we have already discussed, the Moidavolu copper plate of Pallava Shiva Skandavarman. You can see there are several plates, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sheets of copper. They are tied together with the help of a ring, and there is a seal which is the seal of the issuing dynasty, that is the Pallavas, and it is written in Prakrit language, and all the early copper plate charters are written in Prakrit language, while the later copper plate charters are written in Sanskrit language. As this is an early copper plate charter, writing is in Prakrit language, and you can also see each sheet contains only 2 lines of writing, and the writings are also in very bold character. This is the plate of the Shiva Skandavarman. This is slightly later a copper plate charter. This is dated to the 5th century. This copper plate was issued by a Maukhari king, Harivarman, who was actually a subordinate of the Gupta emperor Buddhagupta. You can see the letters are slightly different, and this is also written on a single sheet of copper, not earlier we have seen as like in the Moidavolu copper plate, which contains several sheets. This is written in only one sheet. This is another late copper plate charters of the Palas of Bihar and Bengal. This is Mahendra Pala's copper plate charter from Jagjivanpur, which is a village in the Malda district of West Bengal. This belongs to the 9th century. As you can see the beautiful seal of the Palas at the top of the copper plate, and the writings are also standardized, and there are very short letters. They are not as bold as the Moidavolu copper plate charter, as also the Shankarpur copper plate. This is a very famous copper plate charter of the Chola king Rajaraja. This is called the larger Leiden grant. It records the donation of the revenue of a village for the maintenance of a vihara at Nagapattinam. There are several sheets of copper, most probably numbering 35 to 36. So, this is one of the very famous copper plate charters of the Pallavas. You can see the beautiful seal of the Pallavas containing a tiger, 2 fish and a bow. This is the sheets of the larger Leiden grant of the Chola king Rajaraja. Now, the structure of the text of the land grants. As we have already discussed that several authorities, the Smriti authors have prescribed how a copper plate charter should be formatted. So, we will now discuss the different sections of the copper plate charters. A copper plate should begin with a preamble, that is the introductory portion of the copper plate charter. It should contain an invocation invoking any god or goddess. Then it will contain the place of issue of the copper plate charter, then name of the donor and the address to the inhabitants of the gift area. Then a copper plate charter should contain the notification section. It should specify the gift, where it is located, the name of the village, the name of the administrative unit, etc. And then will introduce the recipient with, if he is a Brahmana, his Gotra, his Shakha, his Pravara, all this will be related, and then the occasion for which the land was gifted, the purpose of the land grant, and in some cases we also have a detail about the boundaries of the gifted land, where we can easily get an idea of the type of settlement within which the gift land was situated. Then the copperplate charter should contain at the end exhortation, the name of the conveyancer, the date, the name of the writer, the name of the engraver, with the authentication, which often contains the signature by the issuing authority. Like as for example, in this Kurukshetra Varanasi grant of Harshavardhana, at the end we have a beautiful signature of King Harsha. Now, the format of the copperplate charters. We will now discuss the format of 3 copperplate charters of Harshavardhana. One is the Kurukshetra Varanasi grant, the next is the Bashkhera copperplate, and the next is the Madhuban plates. 3 copperplate charters of Harshavardhana, all of them contain the similar format. They begin with a grand description of the Jayaskandhavara. A Jayaskandhavara is actually a temporary camp of victory from which copperplate charters were issued. Next, the genealogy of the family beginning with Naravardhana has been stated. It ends with Harshavardhana, the issuer of the land grant. Then Harsha addresses the hearers of the order of the grant, which begins with the phrase Samupagatan, which means that those who have assembled to listen to the order of the land grant. Next comes the location of the granted land or the granted village. Sometimes plots of lands were granted and sometimes one village or several villages were granted. The privileges to be enjoyed are described along with the tenure of the land. Then the recipient Brahmana has been introduced with reference to his Gotra and Shakha. Then instruction has been given to the villagers to obey the command and transfer all dues to the recipient. Next follows the verses of benediction, which are quoted from the Smritis, and the charter ends with reference to the Dutaka. Dutaka is one who communicates between the king and one who requires land, and the engraver and the date. So, this is a format which is maintained in all the 3 copperplate charters of Harshavardhana. Now, I will give some example of the description of how a description of a Jayaskandhavara in the Khalimpur copperplate charter of Dharmapala occurs. It says, I quote, "Now from his is Dharmapala, from his royal camp of victory pitched at Pataliputra, where the manifold fleets of boats proceeding on the path of Bhagirathi make it seem as if a series of mountain tops had been sunk to build another causeway for Rama's passage, where the brightness of the daylight being darkened by densely packed arrays of rutting elephants, the rainy season with its masses of black clouds might be taken constantly to prevail, where the firmament is rendered grey by the dust dug up by the hard hoofs of unlimited troops of horses presented by many kings of the north, and where the earth is bending beneath the weight of the innumerable foot soldiers of all the kings of Jambudvipa assembled to render homage to the Supreme Lord." Now, as you can see, this is a grand description of a Jayaskandhavara, not to be taken too literally, and this type of elaborate and grand description of the Jayaskandhavaras normally occur in the copperplate charters of the regional rulers who ruled from the 8th century onwards. In his copperplate from Jairampur, there are 20 Agroharas of the place concerned. They have been, all of them have been addressed in the copperplate charters. Then the Hiranya Samudayikas, the Mahamahattaras, the Pradhanas and the Adhikarnas. So, there are several social groups who have been addressed in the copperplate charters. Then the charter addresses the present and future officers assembled at Shweto Balika Vithi. The Shweto Balika Vithi is the location of the land grant. They are, who are they? They are the Karta Kritika, the Uparika, all of them are royal officers. The Karta Kritika, the Uparika was the provincial governors, the Kumaramatya, the Rajanaka, the Vishayapati, the Tadayuktaka and others subsisting on the grace of the king. The officials of Dandavukti. Dandavukti is a territory which we included the southern part of present West Bengal and also some parts of Odisha. the Mahasamanta, the Maharaja, the Viniyuktaka. So, you can see several officers were addressed in the copperplate charters. Then the Kumaramatya, Rajanaka, Vyavaharins of the Bithi, the Vishadhikaranas, the Mahamahattaras, the Mahattaras, the Pradhanas, the Karanikas, all of them have been addressed, and address have been made to the witnesses. The Pustapalas, who were the Pustapalas? They were actually the record keepers, and also address have been made to the Dharma Karanika. So, these are the several persons who have been addressed in the Jayarampur copperplate of Gopachandra, who is a local ruler. Now, let us see who were the persons addressed in the Khalimpur copperplate of Dharmapala, who is a ruler of the Pala dynasty of the 9th century. First, he addresses the Raja Padapajivins like the Raja, Rajanaka, Rajaputra, Rajamatta. Look, there are several ranks of subordinates actually. Senapati, Vishayapati, Bhogapati, Shashtadhikprita, Dandashakti, Dandapashika. These Dandashakti and Dandapashikas were again military officers. Chauradharanika, which means one who catches dangerous thieves. Daussadha Sadhanika, Duta, Khola, Gamagamika, Abhitvaramana, Hasti Ashva Go Mahisha, Ajabikadhyaksha, Naukadhyaksha, Valadhyaksha, Tarika, Shaul. These were all toll collectors and tax collectors. Tarika, Shaulkika, Gaulmika, Tadayuktaka, Viniyuktaka, people belonging to the class of charters and bhattas. Now, the first section are all Raja Padapajivins, that is, all of them serve the king and get their salary from the king. Next, they address the charters and bhattas, who were the regular and irregular group of soldiers who will be present from time to time, and at last they address the Vishaya Vyavaharins like the Jeshtha Kayastha. The Jeshtha Kayastha is the chief of the scribes, the Mahamahattara, the Dashagramika, the Karanas are again the scribes, and at last the Prativasins are the inhabitants of the gift village, the Kshetrakaras are the cultivators, and also the Brahmanas. So, the Brahmanas come last, not at the beginning. Now, let us see the boundary of a donated land in the Kumilla plate of Lokonatha. This Kumilla is a district in the southeastern part of present Bangladesh, and Lokonatha was again a Samanta ruling there in the 7th century. It says regarding the boundary of the donated land, the forest region having no distinction of natural and artificial, having a thick network of bush and creepers, where deer, buffaloes, boars, tigers, serpents, etc. enjoy according to their will all pleasures of home life. So, this is a forest area in the district of Subungo, of which the 4 boundary lines were thus defined. On the east, the Kanamotika hill. So, there was a hill on one side. On the south, the limit line of the 2 villages Panga and Bapika. On the west portion of the Tamra Pathara, the meaning of Tamra Pathara is not clear, of Jayeshwara. Maybe this is the spelling for Tamra Patta. And on the north, the tank of Mahattara Ranashubha. So, from this description of this type of boundary, we get the idea that the land was actually located at the outskirts of some settlement where there was a forest nearby. So, we can get idea regarding the type of settlement of the gift land. Now, the donors, the recipients, the tenure and the privileges of the land grants. The donors. Who were the donors of the copperplate charters? First, the independent rulers like the kings, King Harshavardhana or King Dharmapala or King Gurjara Pratihara Bhoja or Rashtrakuta King Danti Durga, etc. They were the donors of land grants. Next, the subordinates also granted land, the Samantas and the Mahasamantas. Then we have administrative officers, the Ayuktakas. Then the military officers also granted land, who are the Mahapratiharas. Then we have also land grants by merchants and occupational groups, but these are lesser in number since land was a very valued item and it was also not possible for everyone to gift land. Who were the recipients of the land grants? The individual Brahmanas, the Brahmanas in a group, the temples, the monasteries. There are again some service grant made to the warriors. Now, the service grants were not always tax free. The military officers and occupational groups, the last section is not always tax free. The tenure of land. First, we have in some early charters, we get reference to Akshaya Nivi Dharma, which means permanent endowment, Akshaya Nivi, here Nivi is the capital, which should be Akshaya or permanent, that here you cannot destroy the capital, which means you cannot sell the land, you could only enjoy the income from land. So, the proprietary right, you would not obtain the proprietary right over land if you get it according to the Akshaya Nivi Dharma. Then we have reference to the Bhumitchidra Nyaya, which is the principle of tax free enjoyment of land by one who brings it under cultivation for the first time. And next we have reference to Tamrapatta Dharma, which is almost similar to Bhumitchidra Nyaya. Now, the privileges, some privileges were granted along with the gift land. This type of concept that one should grant privileges along with the gift land, we find at the earliest in the Arthashastra. The officers are advised to give Brahmadeyas with pariharas or exemptions to the Brahmanas. In course of time, a large number of privileges came to be attached with the religious land grants, and the Vakataka land grants were given together with hidden treasure and deposits. The early Pallava land grants suggest that the donated lands were not to be dug for salt, to be treated as different from other parts of the district, free from the entry of royal agents and obligations like supplying essentials to the royal officers on tour, etc. The Palas granted land with mango and madhuka trees, with tax from temporary tenants, fines realized for 10 offences, together with all revenues, etc. The Cholas granted Taniyur status to certain Brahmadeyas within the Naruar locality and thus made them free from its jurisdiction. In this way, we find several types of privileges had been granted by several rulers. Now, for example, the privileges granted in the Jajilpara copper plate of Gopala III, who is a 10th century Pala ruler. It was granted up to their own boundaries with Tala, with Uddesha. Tala means lowland and Uddesha means highland. The Amra Madhuka, the Jalasthala, the Garta Ushara, Uparikara, Dashapachara and Chauradharana, these are the different types of taxes. It was Parirhita Sarvapira, that it was made free from all kinds of piras or obligations. It was Achatavhata Pravesha, which we have already discussed regarding the Moidaholu copper plates. It was Akinchit Pragrajya, that is no dues should be collected from this gift land. It was Samasta Rajabhoga Kara Hiranyadi Pratyaya Sameto, so all dues should be transferred to the donee and not to the king. The rise of the intermediaries was one important aspect of the beginning of the practice of land grants. Land grants through copperplate charters resulted in the rise of intermediaries in between the king and the peasants. The Brahmanas, the temples and the monasteries claimed a portion of the surplus expressed in the growing number of taxation and thus encroached upon the share of produce of the cultivator. The creation of small pockets in which the ruler's control could have been undermined. Now, the impact of land grants on the peasants. There are debates regarding how the land grants weakened the central authority. One view was expressed by R.S. Sharma in his book Indian Feudalism. He thinks that land grants led to the parcellization of the sovereign power of the state, and this is indicated by the appearance of the hierarchy of Samantas, the Mahasamantas, the Rajanakas, Rajaputras, etc. appearing in a group in both inscriptions and literature, as we have already discussed. The opposite view has been expressed by B.D. Chattopadhyay, Harman Kulke and others. They are against this idea of seeing land grants as the cause and symptom of political fragmentation. Rather, they point to the proliferation of state polities in different levels within the broader frame of agrarian expansion, and they thus view land grants as an integrative and legitimizing policy adopted by the rulers. The peasants could have been subjected to greater exploitation or subordination from the earlier due to their proximity to the Brahmana overlord than the king. R.S. Sharma suggested that the land grants resulted in growing stratification among the peasants. The religious donees employed a large number of peasants to cultivate their land, who thus did not own the land they cultivated. So, they were landless peasants. The grant of increasing number of rights led to increasing restriction on peasants' mobility and his subjection to forced labor, which is called Vishti in the land grants. Now, Harbans Mukhia on the other hand argues that peasants exercised absolute control over their production in the early medieval period. R.S. Sharma thinks that in such cases the peasant could be compelled to produce certain cereals which were needed by the donee. The charters simply transferred the income from the villages to those institutions and nothing more. It is a debatable point then whether the grantee could impose fresh imposts upon the villagers. DC Sarkar argues that the Doni had no right to collect the dues and he could hardly impose any new ones. So, this is a view contrary to R.S. Sharma. Now, some examples of different types of copperplate charters. There are some copperplate charters which have been regarded as spurious. So, there are also fake copperplate charters which were probably manufactured by the Donis. This is an example of a spurious land grant of Samudragupta. This is from Gaya. It was most probably forged in the later period from 7th to 8th century. This is the Talcher copperplate of Gayaratunga. Gayaratunga was a Odishan ruler. This is called a Karo Shasana. Karo Shasana are actually not completely free copperplate charters, and by Karo Shasanas a nominal tax were collected from the Donis. So, Karo Shasanas are not totally tax free copperplate charters. Now, to conclude, we have discussed general features of copperplate charters, the emergence of copperplate charters. To sum up, the growing practice of issuing copperplate charters from the 4th century onwards definitely brought in changes in polity, economy and society, which we have discussed in brief, but the impact of such changes was always area specific and to be studied in the background of the geographical and cultural setup of the area concerned. Thank you.